So in the ancient Vedas, there is a branch of medicine called Ayurveda. If you haven't heard the word, it's Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a science that says your physical health depends on your sense of coherence with your environment, with nature, with the type of food you eat, and that your interaction with nature and food should fit your essence. The essence they're talking about is called the dosha. And dosha is your body type. And essentially there are 3 body types according to Ayurveda. I'll explain that in a minute. But let me tell you some of the foundations of Ayurveda. Ayurveda says whenever you have a meal, that meal should have all of the components of sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, or there's a 6th one. I said sour. So every meal should have all of these components in it because they balance each other. That's one. Number 2, when you sit down to eat, you need to sit. You don't eat standing. Number 3, you take your time swallow. I saw a very interesting program with a Belgian doctor from Belgium, and somebody called him and said, I get very bad stomach aches after eating. And the first question he asked is, how fast do you eat? And she said, well, I'm a banker, so I eat fast. He said, you have no idea that when you're eating fast, you're gulping down air. So when we worked on Wall Street, we were constantly gulping air because we had 35 minutes for lunch. So if you get bad pressure in the stomach or indigestion or stomach aches, you're literally swallowing air, which is very painful to the digestive system. So you need to follow the breath, stay with the breath, and take measured bites. That's another. Third, old food is like poison. So if you freeze something for half a month and then microwave, that food is dead. I know that modern life demands this, just so that you're eating dead food. Because it's half a month old, and then it's been frozen at a very low temperature. And then you take it to a sudden high temperature. So the molecular structure of that food completely breaks down. That's another concept. Now in terms of sleep, Ayurveda says that a human body needs about 6 to 6.5 hours of sleep. However, yoga says that during those 6.5 hours, the only time that you're really asleep is when the rapid eye movement behind your closed eyelid stops. So yoga says that the only time you merge with your soul at night is when the movement of your eyeballs stop. It's called the REM, rapid eye movement. The only time you're really resting is when the rapid movement of your eyes stop. And that only happens when your brainwave activity is down to 3.5 cycles instead of 14. A lot of nights you're in bed, but you're not getting rest. You could go to bed at 9 p.m. and wake up the next morning at 9 a.m. with red eyes and very jittery. So on a night like that, you haven't slept really, because you haven't had those 2 hours of REM, or opposite of REM. No rapid eye movement. So according to the Vedas, you join your soul 2 hours ago. And when does that happen? That happens when there's none of you left. So if there isn't a shell, by the time those eyeballs stop moving, there's absolutely no Michelle, no other. you won't be able to remember because that's the deepest part of yourself. That's when you join your soul. And that's when you get rest during those 2 hours. If your eyes continue moving throughout the night behind the eyelids, you're simply in bed. You're not resting. You're not being invigorated, recharged. So now let's come to the 3 doshas of Ayurveda. The 3 doshas are Vata, Pitta, Kapha. I'll start with Vata and then go down the line. And as I discuss each body type, I'll tell you what agitates that kind of person, what makes them unbalanced, and what's soothing for them. So let's start with Vata. I'm a classic Vata. Look at my bones. The Vata has thin, bird-like bones. The Vata has very strong communication skills. The Vata has a refined soul. They're not rough souls. They can speak poetry. They understand feelings. They like literature. They're very powerful salespeople, communicators. They can move people with words. Like if you find a pastor who's very thin and airy, that's a classic Vata. Okay? Vatas can be very moody. They can be extremely angry at somebody and then forgive them 20 minutes later. They can feel highly depressed and be laughing 20 minutes later. So a Vata is on a roller coaster, emotional. This is prior to you balancing yourself. The Vatas get cold very easily. So if you take a Vata to northern Canada, they're really going to suffer. Vatas suffer from cold colors. If you're a Vata, you paint your bedroom that color. Orangish yellow. Or even orange red. If you paint your bedroom ice blue, it's going to destabilize. So warm colors, warm countryside, and in other words, the land where you live needs to be warm. Vatas love humidity along with solid heat. Why? Because they're kite-like. They're very kitey people. If you take a Vata to deep meditation, they don't want to be here anymore. I have many advanced students who are very airy, and I need to take their ankles and plant them. Because after a deep meditation, they don't want to cook for their child anymore. They're more like, Kambiz, I want to be there again. What is this life on earth? They're not depressive, they're just airy. You have to hold them down. So, moody, thin bones, emotions change quite often. They're very cold, low blood pressure, expert communicators, very poetic souls. They can get to people's emotions. Good persuaders, highly artistic. They love literature. They can cry listening to a Vivaldi concerto. Okay, what kind of food for a Vata? Well, let's first discuss this. When a Vata becomes imbalanced, a lot of infections in their body, Vatas also have very dry skin. If you get close to my face, you see that even after I put cream on, the skin is somewhat dry. Vatas tend to have thin hair instead of thick curly hair. Okay, so imbalance in a Vata, infections, very dry skin, rashes even. They can get, for example, diarrhea. The digestive system of a Vata is very volatile. If you have like 3 kiwis right after each other, because a kiwi is highly acidic, the Vata becomes very jittery. Coffee, very, very unbalancing for a body. Cucumber, lettuce, ice cream, very bad for a body because they're cold. What's good for a vata? Pasta, tomatoes, bread, cornflakes with warm milk. Cold dairies are unbalancing for vatas. By the way, as I tell you these doshas, you should know that your body is a combination of two of these. By the way, each dosha is made of two of the earth elements. So vata is made of space and wind. Wind. Space and wind. Vatas often suffer from arthritis because the joints are very fragile. You know, they're bird-like. Low blood pressure. Okay, so as far as a romantic partner, the best for a vata would be, I would say, kapha. I'll describe what kapha is. Santa Claus. So I'll describe what a kapha is. But if you put two vatas together, it's like, honey, are you mad at me again? It's like, no, I didn't say anything. Oh, but you see something? Like, put two violins together in a 35-year-old marriage. So I'm being comical on purpose. When vatas get together, they're both super sensitive. This is a mistake a lot of artists make. You know, when I went to the new school in Greenwich Village, I went to the poetry department. And some of these poets would fall in love with each other. It's a disaster. You know, because poets are very flighty. And then they get married with 2 kids, and it's very difficult for them to anchor down. Vatas get very anxious about the future. They're worried types. So this is before you work on yourself. Worried types. Extremely concerned about the future. Or very sensitive. Are you mad at me? How come you called 20 minutes late? You know, that's a vata. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Pitta. Pitta is medium-sized, freckles, red cheeks, high blood pressure, is easily up at 4:30 a.m., is a CEO of 10 different corporations, extremely intelligent, cannot delegate any work because according to him, everybody's dumb. That's because they're so sharp. In the US, you call them crackerjacks, right? Is that an expression? Yeah. A crackerjack is a pitta. CEO, up at 4:30, high blood pressure, red cheeks, has a temper like anything. So intelligent, has a really tough time delegating because everybody's slower than him or her. They can flare up. Usually a shorter lifespan and usually balding over here in the back of the head for the men. Pittas often become bald. This is a lot of heat. Pittas have very good digestion, you know, because a pitta is on fire. So if you give them a T-bone steak, they'll just consume it. It's because they're working over speed all the time. So of the 3 body types, the pitta can digest a steak better than anybody because their digestive system is just on fire. The whole body's on fire. What does a pitta imbalance look like? A lot of emotional volatility, drunkenness, tantrums, infections also. blood pressure shooting up through the roof. A lot of too many changes. A Pitta may change 12 cities trying to find peace. However, if you harness them, they can build you 20 corporations and think nothing of it. The Pitta is a doer. So if you can harness a Pitta as an employee, they'll move the earth for you. What is the worst kinds of activities and foods for a Pitta? Number one, long voyages. The Pitta is somewhat agitated. So if you go to Alaska for a month and you're sleeping at a different motel every night, Pittas get very aggravated. And you need to give Pittas a routine. It's like, honey, it's 7:30, here's your meal. If you bring the meal at 7:45, you have dishes flying through the air. One of the famous gurus, Muktananda, admits to throwing dishes into the air. Muktananda was an enlightened guru. I recommend you read these two books out of Amazon. One is called From the Finite to the Infinite. The other is called Play of Consciousness. Very, very powerful books about the path to enlightenment. When you look at Muktananda's face, there's this bald, bulging forehead, extremely intense eyes, like that. But he reached Samadhi. So I had met him. Muktananda was very hot. You know, like I tend to have, if you start to feel my energy field, it's like a bit like a spring breeze. It's a soft energy field. His was very peppery. He would zap you. So you know, gurus have different energy fields. So what's not good for a Pitta? A Mexican food, a lot of spices, pungent food, coffee, tobacco, drink is horrible, frequent travel, unpredictable daily schedule. A Pitta needs a very calm partner. And do not put two Pittas together. See, the two Vatas have one problem. The two Pittas have a different problem. You put two fireballs into the same bed. Sexually, it may be nice for 20 minutes, but they'll kill each other. It's fire. And this is why some of them are redheads. It's fiery hair. Almost all redheads are Pittas. It's rare to find a redhead who's like a real teddy bear. Very rare. They're fiery. Very high blood pressure. A lot of strokes. Type A personalities. That's me. Okay, the next one. These are the love bears, okay? Kapha. Kapha has soft, watery eyes. Loves everybody. Very forgiving. Big bones. Has a really tough time getting up in the morning. Hates exercise. You would have to drag them out on a long distance trip. They don't leave their rocking chair. And they love tradition. They keep grandmother's blanket forever. They stayed in one home for 40 years. Very anchored. Very sweet. Children love kaphas. Animals love kaphas. Very kind. Except the problem with the kaphas is, so if you live next to a kapha, you have to move them as a gesture of love. You have to get them to a Pilates class. Make sure you feed them Mexican food. Give them pepper. Give them Turkish coffee. Take them out on a trip. Get them out of the house. The worst thing you can feed a kapha: mashed potatoes, meat, grease, lots of berries. Why? Kaphas have a lot of mucus. You know, because they have these watery eyes, they also have water under the skin. So kaphas have a lot of mucus problems. So you take them to Arizona. You don't take a kapha to Sri Lanka because the humidity is like 90%. Kaphas sweat a lot. Kaphas and pittas are always sweating for two different reasons. The pitta is in high gear. The kapha has fat under their skin, so they suffer with humidity. A kapha would love Arizona, parts of Texas. So what's really good for a kapha is to actually sweat, but in an exercise mode. So you can see by the types of food I'm talking about, potatoes, pasta, greasy things, steamed rice. These things put a kapha to sleep in 5 minutes. Meditation is not very good for kaphas because they need to move. If I have a kapha in a 5-day program, I purposely get after them to move during the breaks. Because if you put a kapha in my 31-point relaxation pose, they're snoring in 2 minutes. They love it. Okay, having made these explanations, one of you raise your hand and tell me the combination of the two that you are. Before you tell me, I'm just going to tell you which earth elements are in pitta and kapha. Pitta is fire and light. Kapha is water and earth. The kapha is very earthy. They have big bones, they're grounded. They weigh more. Okay, so who is what? Give me your dominant one, and then give me the subordinate. Each of you is made up of a combination of the two. I'll give you my example. I'm a Vata Pitta. I'm a Vata in the sense that I'm good with words, language, literature. I have an artistic bend. I used to be extremely moody. I have thin bones. And I'm so airy. Once I was walking in Boston and the wind took me up into the air. A kapha would never go up into the air. I literally went up. It was a sudden gust of wind. We're like kites. So who are you? Give me a combination of the two. Oh, my pitta side, if something's going wrong with joy of life, watch out. Don't be around. So I do have a pitta side when things are not organized. So who are you?
It's funny, I've done the checklist before, particularly in my teacher training, and I came out a Vata kapha, with Vata being the primary.
Right.
But the kapha, I very much enjoy doing exercise. I'm not a sluggish, don't get up in the morning. I get up early in the morning, and I'm not one that you have to push, you have to go on. I love trips, I love travel, I can do a long one. So that part does not fit the kapha personality. But I am very Vata. I'm kind of almost a tridosha.
So
in a
you're,
sense,
but your dominant one is Vata?
Yes, except I obviously do not have thin bones. I have the build of a kapha.
What about a pitta? You don't have the fieriness of a pitta?
I do, so that's why I'm almost a tridosha, in a sense. But I don't, if you do my numbers, if I do the charting, my numbers don't balance out to be, they're not balanced in that sense.
And give me some of your pitta characteristics.
Probably the fieriness and the get up and go, and then sometimes if things don't go right, the sternness and kind of bit sometimes, the frustration.
Okay. And what foods tend to be pleasing and calm?
I love pastas, I love potatoes, I love Mexican food. Yeah, those are like some of my favorites.
Okay. Now, by the way, you could love something that's very bad.
Yes, yes.
Most of the time.
So the
Most
question is,
definitely.
the question is, what gives you a feeling of well-being? Like cold foods really make me shiver. I mean, I like fresh lettuce and cucumber, but it makes something inside me shiver. Tomatoes, for example, I love them, but it's cold. If I have a date or a banana or an avocado, it grounds. Coffee shakes in the marrow of my bones for like 5-6 hours. I really suffer with coffee. Who else? Tell me.
I think first one and the last one are pretty much.
So your body build is very much a vata. But you're saying that you also have a kapha tendency in you.
I think so.
So you're definitely missing the pitta. You're not a firecracker.
Not at all.
Right. How do you do waking up in the mornings?
It's hard. Although I love mornings, but it's hard.
And do you know what types of foods ground you in a positive way?
I know I can't have anything cold. And coffee does bother me. Coffee, lettuce, tomato, I can't have any of that. It just really messes up my stomach.
Yeah, visually you're very much a vata. Visually. The vata is hard to fake because the bones are very thin. It's like bird-like. Who else?
I did the test a few years ago and I came out with lots of Kriya, but when we were explaining the kapha, I feel like I'm going through a couple of phases now. Because I was always going to go exercising, and then it's just like, now I just want to be mellow.
You should know, by the way, when we have a talk about Ayurveda, you really should go back to your original self, not who you are now. So if you've done 10 years of yogic training, you may now be a modified Michelle. You know what I'm saying? So who were you originally?
You also balance out yourself.
Yes, I mean, if you do a lot of work on yourself. Yes. What about you, Ken?
I come out on the test, but tried those, but kapha pitta. No, kapha vata, sorry.
Kapha vata.
Vata.
And what are some of your vata signs?
I don't remember what everything else.
Do you get cold easily or not?
No, but I hate the heat because I don't remember what they are, but
Okay.
kapha vata, and but when you do the scoring, my pitta's right there with the vata.
On equal basis.
Really close.
Okay. Do you have some pitta characteristics? Mover and shaker, not easy to delegate to others because you feel more confident.
Yes.
What is your profession?
It's tough.
Used to do?
No, I wasn't a good professional. I worked with an environmental protection agency as a bureaucrat, but so it was a fight the whole time because I'm a really passionate environmental person. I'm not a bureaucrat.
Okay.
I think I am the first two. Like
Vata and
and
pitta.
Pitta.
And which one do you think is dominant?
I think Pitta.
Pitta?
I'm always cold. I have digestive issues.
That's Vata. So
Yeah.
you're more of a Vata.
But
Do you have a fiery temper?
sometimes, yeah. But
What about your language skills? Are you a good speaker?
kind of.
You enjoy
It depends
literature?
where English topic.
Okay. Are you a good persuader? Persuasion takes good words.
Yeah. I talk to my friends.
Okay, so you get cold easily. Do you have low blood pressure?
Yes, I have very low pressure. Always.
And then give me some more Pitta signs. You know, Pitta is that.
Like, I'm very active in school and at work.
Hard worker.
Very.
Fairly easy to get up in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you two ladies, do you want to take a guess? I mean, you may have taken this test already.
I've taken the test a few times. Vata Pitta.
Vata.
Yeah.
Are you mindful of the types of foods that suit your health best?
Suit my health and what I like, two very different things.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
What suits your health?
vegetables, sweet potatoes. I eat a lot of salad, but it's kind of like I push myself to do it. And that's more about I feel good mentally because I have a lot of greens in my system. But I don't know that that's necessarily something that my body likes that much. It's usually,
cold food.
yeah, a little gaseous, you know. I don't eat meats, but I do eat seafood. I do eat lots of seafood. That seems to work really well with me. And I do dairy, but I do it in my chai. I don't do a lot of dairy often, but you know, if I had to narrow it down to one food, it'd be cheese for the rest of my life. But I don't eat very much cheese. Just
In terms of milk, Vata is better off having warm milk.
and I do that in my chai. I mix it with the spices. That seems to not make any. It really works with my system. It doesn't because before I had some dairy reaction. But I have sinus stuff. Was an asthmatic for years and years, and I don't know that I would say I have a great talent with language. That seems to be something that's more of a comfort issue with me, right? So I think it's there, but I think I just learned not to use it. And so now, later in life, it's become something that's much easier and more enjoyable for me.
But when you're teaching asanas, don't you have to
Yeah.
put words out there?
Definitely, that's been something that's grown over the 9, almost 10 years that I've been teaching that's developed for me. It's actually become something I really enjoy.
Complimentary, I studied with her for 6 years, and it just seemed, from my perspective as a student, it just seems to flow from her, and I just am in awe when I was teaching or studying under her. It comes so, from my perspective, naturally, beautifully from her.
The verbal descriptions also.
Yes.
And last but not least,
I just want to add, I want to compliment. I also think you're a very persuasive writer, and I think your language may not always come out of your mouth, but you're a very persuasive writer.
I appreciate that. That is something that, again, it's something that I take, that perfectionistic streak, is that part of Vata?
yes,
Or is that part of
Pitta
Pitta?
is much
That makes
more
more sense.
perfectionist.
So there's a big part of Pitta for me, is that. And so letting some of that go. But the writing for me is something, again, that I enjoy, but it's also something that's very challenging. And then when I'm done, I'm like, oh, love that. You know, so.
Is it creative writing?
Yeah, and you know what? It may just be something, an email to the community, but so it might be work, but for me, it's kind of a labor of love or a creative effort.
Just a quick pause in this conversation. If you go to my website, on the upper right corner, there's an icon for my blog. If you want to get together on a weekly basis, one of the things the Florida group does, they do the meditation, and then they have a short discussion about one of the lessons I present. So my blog has 82 pieces of writing. You may agree with each other that for the next 3 days, you're going to take a particular blog and its issue and live out that issue so that on Wednesday when you finish meditating with each other, you have a short personal dialogue of how you did with that lesson. So the blog they're not formal lessons, but they talk about things like right next to you, there's an unknown self. That may be a particular blog. And then you say, okay, we'll focus on this for 3 days. So after the meditation on Wednesday, we're going to talk about this. How do I discover undiscovered parts of this? There's nearly 12,000 readers on it. But the blog is a very easy, it's easier than Odyssey in a sense because it's just like 2 paragraphs. And you have something to talk about after the meditation. So, body type or dosha?
Definitely Pitta. And then I go back and forth on the other 2. So I have some very strong characteristics of Vata and some very strong characteristics of
Okay.
Kapha.
Your hair has a reddish hue, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
and I was born a redhead,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
Ethnic acid.
Don't get her on the basketball court.